Hey everyone, Kevin here from LP24audio.com. How you doing? I'm just here to show you some tricks and tips on making lead sounds. Now it's a broad topic, but you should know that the lead is your main sound that captivates the audience. It engages them. It replaces the old kind of rock lead idea like a guitar solo or lead vocal. In electronic music, we don't always have a vocal available, so we create a cool lead and it needs to grab your attention. So I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on adding leads to your track. Okay, first of all, how to sound design a good lead. Well, that is such a broad topic, but let me throw some things at you. One is you probably want it to be relatively bright waveform unless you have a super mellow track and you want to kind of have a relaxed main melody, main lead. Okay, so let's assume we want it bright and we're going to choose any of these waveforms that have a lot of edges, right? Anything with a lot of edges or dramatic edges, even like the sawtooth wave. Not that one. Something like that. Okay, it has dramatic edges. It's going to be bright. It's going to have a lot of harmonics. Let's try some cool things with the LFO because a lot of leads have some movement in them, and that comes in various shapes and flavors. But I'm going to show you this tip. One, you could try putting an LFO on maybe the sync for now. I'll show you that one. And you play with the amount essentially by moving these, because in this case, see, this is what they call unipolar movement. So we're actually only going in this range. If I play a note now, so we're only moving in a small area, but it's adding some movement, which is interesting. Okay, now the other kind of movement for a lead often is portamento, which is sliding between two notes. So once you add the sliding between the two notes, again, a little bit more movement. Let's try something like this, maybe a non-tempo synced, so turn BPM off, go faster on the sync rate. Notice how there's some additional harmonics in that sound? Okay, that could be interesting. Let's try it not on sync, but maybe pulse width modulation, which is really the act of changing the wavelength. Okay, it's actually fitting it into a smaller area in the window, which is a great effect. Almost sounds like vibrato when you do it because it does affect the perceptible pitch. And by the way, pulse width is traditionally only for square waves, but in Serum you can do it in any waveform, which is fantastic. Let's say, there you go. Here's a slower pulse width modulation. See, this could be a kind of future sound if you muffled it a bit. Has some effects on it. Maybe some unison. You know, pop reverb, of course, delay, something like this on it. Okay, kind of a mellow lead. Let's keep it on the bright lead idea here for a second. Turn some of these down quite a bit. Okay, here's a wonderful tip. You could add unison, as I did. You could add some white noise to kind of hype it up a little bit. Okay, there's all kinds of different colors here. We could try. Okay, let's say you want some kind of wild movement in it. You know, you're not going for that really mellow thing. Well, one thing you could do is resample. In the new Serum, you could take your sound and render it to, or resample it to another oscillator. So let's try that. And and watch what happens. It rendered it to oscillator B here, or at least it should have. Oh, there it did. It did. It didn't update the waveform. Okay, notice how all that movement we just made is now part of this wavetable. So this is what our sound looks like. It has a lot of jagged edges, which is the noise, so I can turn that off. It also has the pulse width modulation, so I can turn that off. See, it's kind of like restarting, and if you listen to it without any movement from LFOs or anything, okay, you get some lovely timbres. Now the scratchiness I'd like to fix. I'll show you that. But I'm going to find a frame I really like. Something like that. And hit this. Now let's simplify, because when you have so many frames you either have to highlight them all and crossfade them, or we can completely simplify. In fact, I'm just going to pick a couple frames I think look good at the moment, although you could always audition them. Like that one's nice and buzzy, so I'm going to choose that one. Add remove multi-selection, because I just shift clicked a lot of them. And let's see, maybe another one over here we'll keep. Okay, notice I only have so many frames now. Let's remove those. Okay, so we can shift click and do some kind of morph, either crossfade or spectral. First, to clean it all up though, we're going to maybe normalize each one so they're full volume before clipping, and then crossfade the edges a little bit. We could try 16 samples, which is pretty minimal. Did I do that to all of them? Let's see. There you go. And now let's morph them. Let's just crossfade them for now, but you could do spectrally as well. That'd be a good bass too. But let's keep it as a lead, higher octave. Okay, now that we have a cool custom wavetable, again, we could keep adding some more movement. See how this could go on and on, right? Okay, a little clicking at the beginning, maybe bring that up. Okay, if you want to really make it stand out too, you can add this multi-band compressor, which will, it was now customizable. You could bring up the lows, mids, and highs separately in terms of the threshold and how loud it appears to sound at those bands. Okay, of course all this depends on the context of your song, but other lead tips would be, let's resample let's copy it from B to A, so we have the same custom wavetable over here, and add a little movement by detuning one of them. Okay, a slight fine detuning will add the kind of same effect we get with unison, but I find it sounds, well, let's say it's more customizable if you do unison on one of them and then just detune the other one slightly. Get different variations quickly. What else would I do for a lead? One thing is utilize some envelopes. We haven't done that yet. For example, you want to go kind of into the trap styles or some kind of add a little bit of movement and pitch. You could drag these on to your envelope, or your envelopes onto your coarse tuning, which is the smoothest tuning inside of Serum. And I'm going to hold Option Shift and click to make it what's called unipolar. It only goes one way. Notice how the pitch starts down here and it raises just like the envelope. Other things I see done quite often and use myself is LFOs right onto, or envelopes. Let's do an envelope because we already have one going. Uh, Envelope onto some kind of filter, maybe a high pass filter, because with your leads you like to cut away often some of the lows. That way you don't get any interference with your bass sound. Okay, we could try out different types of filters, of course. Serum having multi-filters that are quite powerful. Okay, so maybe a little more movement on something like that. Okay, there's all kinds of possibilities, of course. You know, let's say like this. We can take it one step further and resample the whole thing. Let's try that and see what happens. Okay, so I can disable a lot of these things now. And now we're on the new sound. Let's just get this back in order. Okay, let's see, can I hear it? Oh, I didn't get rid of that movement, but that's quite alright actually. Turn the noise off. You notice how noisy it is? Probably because I had my noise on and there was a lot of movement going on and a lot of detuning. So maybe I'll recombine it with the old oscillator too. So you get a nice edgy top, kind of very digital sounding. You can tell it's noisy because of the amount of randomness in there. And that might be good. Other quick tips on leads, by the way, also has to do with pitch, is what if you just took an LFO here, put it on the fine tuning, make sure it's bipolar so it's going from below the zero crossing and above. This is vibrato. If you do it at about a 16th note, or usually 6 hertz or so, 6 to 10. Kind of that spooky lead. Which, by the way, we could chill out in the matrix if we want. We could kind of make it, I don't know, a certain percentage there. You could also make it controllable via the mod wheel. Okay, that's what they call the aux source, which is going to act as a barrier between hearing vibrato and hearing it fully. Okay, now going into processing real quick, there's all kinds of things depending, of course. If you want your lead to be wide, put on the hyperdimension and try out different shapes, different unison amounts. That's going to add width and some depth to it, which could also make it seem unclear, by the way, in certain mixes. Depends on your other instruments. Distortion adds your harmonics, flanger and phaser, and of course delay and reverb all add movement. The EQ is kind of like a final touch, right? You need a little bit more something from it, mid-range or high-end, and you can easily grab it from there. Filter, this is great because we could put a final filter on it, say a comb filter. To give it some funky movement. Let's try an LFO on that too. Pretty cool. So notice one of the themes here with your leads is movement, and adding lovely amounts of movement that will help out in the context of your music. That's where I'm going to leave it with you guys. You can totally take this and run with it. Hopefully you got a lot of good ideas from there, but the core theme being movement using LFOs and envelopes, also taking your steps your sounds a couple steps further than you would normally. Just making the sound with movement's fine, but then resampling it's a great technique to kind of almost restart the process and take the sound, evolve it even further by manipulating it. So hopefully that helps give you some great ideas. Thanks for listening. It's Kevin from LP24audio.com. Hit us up if you have any questions. Thanks.